So, Concordia was really essential to my career path. I want you to know that. And Concordia and the co-op, the kinds of work terms that I did. So, did you all see my bio? So that information is contained in there. We can talk more about it if you want. But what I wanted to do here today is give you a sense. This isn't the be-all and end-all. These are some thoughts about what I've learned over time about what works and what doesn't work as well. But there are a couple of elements, and I want to tell you some stories around this, and then give you a few other thoughts, and then we can talk. Number one, and this is a theme that comes up for me all the time. So you see that number one word, professionalism. How many of you have already had a work term? More than one. Right, so one thing that's really important is learning about how to be in a work environment. And that's what I felt that my co-op work terms really helped me with. That being said, I had already been working. I had an unusual, most of us wait tables or take on summer jobs like that. My summer jobs were keep lunching. So they actually helped me because I was the person who the econ professors turned to type their papers, because I could actually do, at the time, this mattered. I mastered technical typing in my copious free time. So I usually had something like 3 extra jobs going, in addition to the work terms, just so you know. Sometimes you just have to work hard. One of my PhD student friends had she was working on her dissertation. When there's no wind, row. So sometimes you just have to get through it. But I'm saying it's professionalism, and professionalism brings a whole bunch of different ideas. But the notion is that when people look at you, what they see and what they experience is a professional. Let me hear from you a couple of elements, what you think professionalism looks like. What are you learning? Yeah. Behaviors.
Are you attracted to people?
Like what? Can you give me an example?
Actually, there's a breakfast event last Friday, and that was my first introduction, like networking. It's all looking at people, like looking them in the eyes and shaking them.
Right. Greeting people. Your first impression is super important. That's what people are going to walk away from. So are you going to shake their hands and look them in the eye? By the way, good morning, it's very nice to meet you. By the way, what I just did, in some cultures, that's actually really rude. For me, to look a man in the eyes would be extremely rude. I'm kind of hoping that that's going to go away, but that is the reality in many cultures, and so you need to be very aware of the cultural specificities. It's why I had a couple of different pictures up for dressing for success. I mean, this is the dress for success today and in my usual work environment. But if I'm going to be going down in a uranium mine, as I did, I'm sorry the pictures weren't bigger, but there I was in coveralls and boots, and that's what you wear when you're going to go down in a uranium mine. Or if you're going to go to an oil field, you're going to wear the clothes that they give you. Or if you're going to go meet a bunch of people in a village, it's probably better to wear jeans because it's practical, but probably not a good thing to do that in the office. So yes, some basics. Does this sound basic to you? Be on time, punctuality. So you're nodding, which is great. I have an ongoing issue with my own team, and I am addressing it right now by starting meetings at exactly the time that they are scheduled to start. Have you ever tanked an interview? I see you nodding. I have tanked an interview. Personally, I feel it's extremely important to learn lessons from when you do not do well, because then you are your best teacher. So I have gone back and I've looked over what didn't work, what could I have done better? Was it preparation? Was it the way I answered a question? If you are asked a question that you don't know the answer to, can you give me a couple of ways that you might think of answering that question? You look like there's an answer there.
Well, I think maybe what I would say first is to clarify the question and ask for maybe an example of what they mean.
Very good.
And then try to answer it on something.
Yep, I've interviewed a lot of people. That's a really, really good thing to do, because that demonstrates your interest. It also demonstrates that you want to make sure that you get it right. That's a really good thing to do. So just ask a clarifying question. have your interview full of clarifying questions, people are gonna start to go, wait a second, is this what my time with this person is gonna be like? So use your clarifying questions judiciously. What else can you do?
You could just, in case you don't know the exact answer, you can present your thinking, like how you're thinking about approaching the answer.
Exactly. People want to know, they want to know what kind of person you're going to be like to work with. So if you don't know the exact answer, don't pretend you do, all right? Because if you do, then they'll know that you're winging it, and that's likely to be the way you're going to be working with them. So instead say, look, I really don't know, but this is how I would approach it. So these are both really, really good strategies, because you're not going to know all the answers in an interview. There's a couple of other pieces of advice I would give you about interviews. Number one is, these are going to be super basic, all right, 2 of them. Number one is, remember to breathe. I'm dead serious about this one. Sometimes people forget to breathe. So just remember to breathe. Take a breath before you answer the question. So that what's your objective? Is to answer the question. Because very often I have people who come to interviews and we ask them a question and we wait for 5 minutes to see whether we're going to get an answer. We get all this interesting stuff, but there's no answer to the question. Answer the question. Then if you think you have other interesting stuff to add, by all means, and frame it in a way that says that you think that this will be relevant for them to know. And one final thing is, when you interview, do you know who you're interviewing with? Do you know the organization you're interviewing with? Does this sound basic? I've actually had people come who have no clue what the World Bank is. It's not that hard to find out what the World Bank is and what it does. Referring to the World Bank as a company is likely to tell me, so this is not that you guys are going to be coming to the World Bank necessarily, but do your homework on your potential employer. Make sure you know what their own business objectives and overall big strategy. If they've been in the news recently, just bone up on it. Not necessarily that it's going to come up in the interview, but just to demonstrate some awareness of that. And if you can, get some background on the people who are going to be interviewing you. If you can, you may not know who that's going to be. But remember that the person who is interviewing you could be in all different kinds of roles. We tend to, in the World Bank, do what we call a 360 kind of approach. So we'll have people who are going to work with you in all different kinds of ways. So it might be your boss interviewing you, your potential boss. It might be, we use the word assistants, because some time ago the word secretaries for some reason became a term that was no longer acceptable, which I think is unfortunate, because I think that secretary is an incredibly important role. I'm saying this because there are a couple of incredibly important roles that very often people forget that these are incredibly important roles. Secretaries, drivers. You guys ever been in a situation where somebody's driving you around? Like, have you ever taken a taxi? Like, hands up who hasn't taken a taxi. Exactly. Understand your gifts point that I'm making. Now, so you each come in with this kind of good baggage of being in Montreal, being in Concordia, being in the co-op, having that. And then you each have your own gifts. And you might not even know what those gifts are yet. But at some point, you will begin to realize. And it goes well beyond your knack, your ability, your love of economics. You've got something else. In my case, I learned I'm a connector. I'm just a natural connector. So I see this person, we'll talk for 10 minutes, and I'll figure out, oh, you should really talk with this person. And I'll put you two together, and then you guys figure out if you want to continue it or not. But that's what connectors do. So there's a professional place for that. You're nodding, what is it? Online. Exactly, LinkedIn is a great place for people like me, for connectors. And I actually pull in people from really different spheres because I'm a self-described weirdo in this sense. Did you all read my bio? Did it look like a standard economics course? Did you read my bio? Yeah, another one of my gifts is sort of weird sense of humor. And use that. Sometimes, if you're interested, I can tell you a couple of stories off the camera about how the sense of humor got me out of a few really, really tough spots. But number one, I would say, is master the material. Be good at what you do. Please don't market yourselves as somebody who's an expert in X. And then when you get there, people ask you about X. And they go, holy moly, he knows nothing about X. I can't get anything out of him about X. Or they go, whoa, not only is he amazing on X, but I can actually get Y and Z from him as well. Oh. Right, so master the material. And master the material even beyond, so I don't have it quite there, but it's later on, even beyond your own topic, beyond the field of economics. If there's something interesting there, pursue it. If your gut tells you, hey, this is interesting, let me pursue this. Does it hurt to try? Maybe, but you certainly know the outcome if you don't. Let me give you an example from my very, very early career at the World Bank. So since you've all studied my bio in depth, you know that I established the World Bank's office in Gabon. At the time, we did not have this massive network of country offices worldwide. Since I was a junior person at the World Bank, I accompanied the team to Morocco, and I was the one who carried the printer and the paper because I was the youngest one on the team. We didn't have an office. Our office was our hotel rooms, respectively. I went to Gabon. I was the country economist. We can talk about what a country economist does if you're interested. It's a fascinating kind of job. You do all sorts of things. And when I came back from my second trip, which we call missions at the World Bank, I wrote a back to office report, we called it, that said we should have a presence in Gabon. Now, nobody had told me that some junior person should not make that kind of recommendation. But I just thought this is the compelling thing that I feel, having come back from this country after 2 visits. What I see is a strong need for this because of the kinds of reforms that were being implemented and because of the kind of support they were or were not getting. To my amazement, 2 hours later, my director, not my direct boss, his boss, sent the paper back with great idea, make it happen. Okay. And there ensued an interesting series of discussions because then there was the dance of, okay, so who's going to do that? Well, it ended up being me. I was going to go out there for 3 months. I stayed there for 4.5 years. And I learned so much from that experience. Now, would I have been prepared to do that if I hadn't had all of this previous work experience that the co-op gave to me? If I hadn't been able to work with the government of Canada and have an idea of what briefing notes do? Even though it was very different, I understood the bureaucratic process of briefing notes because I'd seen it. I worked at the Royal Bank of Canada. I understood what it was to analyze data and present it to your boss, whether it's the Minister of Finance or, excuse me, in this case, there we go, the voice is going. I'm going to interject. Life lesson number 1. This is the don't do. This is, me telling you what I learned not to do. Don't try and burn the candle at both ends. Get enough sleep. Enough sleep is valuable. Read the research, they're right. Get enough sleep. So I tend to burn the candle at both ends. I still do that. So I learned a lot from my co-op experience, and it really helped me to be an independent manager of an office in a country in Africa where people thought that I was really courageous for going, which I find kind of funny because it didn't take particular courage to live there. It was a great place to live. It was a great place to work. Perhaps the biggest courage that I had was leaving my office in Washington because there's all the networking in Washington that I wasn't able to do. That I thought was the biggest courage of going there. It marked my entire career, my view of development. I was able to go out into the field to meet villagers, to see in action what international development means. And I wouldn't have been able to do that, I think, excuse me, as well as I could have had I not done the co-op. So I learned how to work in an office, in a team, but then I was the manager of the office. Then I also had to learn how to deal with stuff that came up. So first of all, don't be the one who makes stuff come up, but then stuff is gonna come up and you might have to deal with the stuff that comes up. So that's we were talking about the X, Y, and Z. Sometimes Y and Z is your ability to deal with the people who are making the stuff come up. And that's really valuable. Under promise, over deliver is a phrase that I learned from somebody who at the time was what we call a country director at the World Bank. And he was a master at this art. He would manage his deliveries being loans to the countries that he was working on, development projects being financed. And he would be the one that the vice president could go to and say, I need you to pull a rabbit out of a hat. I need 100 million extra or 500 million extra delivered in the next 2 months. Can you do it? Sure, no problem. I'll just pull these up. They're teed up. These projects could be delivered in the next couple of months. We can just move them forward. That kind of being ready, understanding. So seeing down the line what your institution, what your bosses, your managers may need, and being able to respond to that, that's part of that Y and Z. But under promise and over deliver, but I can't emphasize it enough. Let me just do a quick check. Who in this room has never made a mistake in their whole life? Show of hands, please. I'm so glad to see that. Because I used to do ethics training, and I would ask that question, and there'd always be some poor person who would put up their hand. It was usually only one, and then we had a very good discussion that ensued. Because guess what? We're all human beings, and we all make mistakes. So, we talked about this earlier, but I want to emphasize this. You're going to make mistakes. Whether it's in the interviews, whether it's in the work terms, whether it's in life in general. Learn from the mistakes, adapt, and you're your best teacher. So just ask yourself what happened. Don't beat yourself up. Just ask yourself what happened. What could I have done differently? And if the answer is not a thing, move on. Just move on, because stuff happens. You learn a lot from life, not just from your own, so life including your co-op experience, but life otherwise. So being creative, when I suggested that we do they opened the office in Gabon, that wasn't written anywhere. I mean, that was completely out of the blue. But sometimes it actually holds. So listen to your gut. Make a reasoned presentation if you think that this is the way that your employer should go. Or if you're not employed by somebody, if you're becoming self-employed, listen to your gut and make yourself a reasoned presentation. Run it by people if needed. There's that word professionalism again. And professionalism takes all kinds of forms. I have a favorite example. There's a barista at the World Bank. Now, baristas, you think, gosh, it's not really a profession, is it? That's not really, that's just somebody who's giving coffee out and working as a cashier. This woman has made a profession out of being a barista. She knows hundreds of coffee orders, hundreds of names. So people will go to that particular cafe just because of this woman, because they want to be treated the way she treats them. She remembers them, she remembers their order, and she makes their life just a little bit better. She jokes with them, etc. So professionalism can take all different kinds of forms. Volunteering, if you look at my background, you will see that I volunteered to serve, I'm sighing because it was hard, to serve on the board of my co-op. I live in a co-op. So co-ops in the US are very interesting entities. Everybody's in everybody's business is why I'm sighing. And I served on the board for 2 out of my 3 years because I quit after 2 years. Sometimes you need to know when to quit. Because I had served as president for the 2nd year. And it was incredibly difficult. We accomplished what we needed to accomplish. And I said, you know what, I need my life back. I need to be able to do my day job because I'm not being paid for this. But we had solved some incredibly difficult problems and nobody was mad at me for, everybody understood why I resigned. So sometimes you do need to quit because you need to not bite off more than you can chew. Odd jobs. When I say odd jobs, I had a great discussion with this young lady who's an economist. She's looking for a job. She may be an economist with not a very strong economics background, more of a kind of an international relations sort of background. So she's been having a hard time finding a job in economics. And what she did instead was she's working with a nonprofit. She's out there on the street, she's doing that pitch. She's one of those who's handing you the flyers and saying, could you give to this really worthy charity? And you can imagine how she's treated. How do you guys treat people who walk up to you on the street and hand you the flyers?
We don't think
You don't, right? You don't look at them, you don't take the flyer, sometimes you don't say everything. So she, instead of being grousing about that experience, she says, what can I learn from it? How can I learn to do that pitch so fast that I get their attention? How can I learn to inure myself to the kinds of treatment that people get? So she's turned what could be a negative into a huge set of positives. I really admire that. Especially this, she's got her pitch down pat because she knows that you have only a certain number of seconds to deliver it. Have you all heard the term elevator pitch? Yeah? So, elevator pitch is, what would you say to name your person, the president of the country? If you're in a country, what would you say to the president of your institution if you were riding in an elevator with them? Because an elevator ride takes how long? I mean, it depends how high the skyscraper is, right? But typically it's a couple of seconds. So you have to hone your pitch to different time periods. Hone your pitch. If somebody asks you, what are you about? Or if you see that you have an opportunity to do that, know what your pitch is beforehand. Don't make it up at the time. Practice it. Practice it on friends. Practice it with each other. Get it really solid, and that will help you in your interviews. Because usually the first question is something like, why are you great for this job? Usually. You better ace that question. Okay? You need to know why you are good for the job. So odd jobs can really, really lead you to something. And I already talked with you about other disciplines, but pay attention to what others are doing. Pay attention to what's going on in chemistry and biology, so in the sciences, in math, in the arts, because you never know where a connection might come from. Now, this is from my experience, because I am a connector and I am a multidisciplinary type. You can also really go deeply, deeply technical. That is another way to do it. And I would still advise you to pay attention to what's going on in other disciplines, because you can still get insights for your particular field of study or field of endeavor. Okay, just to let you know, you have your perfect plan, life's going to get in the way. That I can pretty much guarantee you. And anybody for whom it doesn't get in the way, please reach out to me in 30 years. The final word that I want to leave you with. I've got a couple of words up here. This is only what drives me, because diversity is something that is really important to me as well. But curiosity, asking questions, finding out, understanding, finding out about people and what drives them, that is important to me. Over the years, and part of that resilience, gratitude. Being thankful for what you can be thankful for. When you're going through a difficult time, I have found a couple of things have really helped me. One is find out what you're grateful for, and even if it's just sunsets. By the way, they're never just sunsets. That mode of gratitude really makes a difference. So I know this doesn't sound like any economics talk, but this is life, and it's really because life happens. Gratitude. I can't emphasize that one enough. And you put yourself in grateful mode with people, it makes a difference. And service. I happen to be somebody who's deeply motivated by the notion of service. I was working for KPMG, Pete Marwick, for a year, and I quit because I couldn't bear it. I quit. I moved to the World Bank because I wanted to be working in a job where the bottom line was not about money, where the bottom line was about making people's lives better, contributing to that. So the role that I'm in right now really floats my boat, because I am working on a program that is fighting poverty and hunger, and that is awesome. But work isn't everything. That's why I have the picture of the eclipse there, because sometimes you just have to either stop and smell the roses, or if there is an eclipse, make the time to watch it with the glasses. Thank you very, very much. Questions, mingling, whatever you would like.